Welcome to Time to Talk with Ross McCarthy. So we've invited Ross back for another chat all about dogs, dominance, nature versus nurture, and all of those lovely things that we have to deal with in relation to dog behaviour. So get yourself a coffee and enjoy as me and Ross McCarthy chew the fat on dogs, working with dogs and dog behaviour. Take care, enjoy. Hi folks, I'm here again with the lovely Ross McCarthy, and we had such a good time last time when we spoke that we thought we'd get together again and just chew the fat. So we introduced Ross last time and told you all about him and what he's doing, and this time we thought we'd just chat about anything that comes up really, dog behaviour, aggression, working with people, working with dogs, and whatever. We have just been talking about my frothy coffee, which is very, very frothy at the minute, which it's a frothy machine that Ross got me years ago and I still use it. So have you got a frothy coffee there? Are you still on the frothy coffees, Ross?
I've got just a regular old Nescafe coffee, no froth, no nothing. I thought I'm just waiting for you to get the froth on the end of your nose while we're talking. And I'm not going to tell you if you do.
I'll be slurping away.
I know, just chatting away with that on the end of your nose. No, I think also we should pay reference to the fact that we're now in week 6 of lockdown, just to excuse the fact that we haven't had our hair cut or anything like that for some period of time.
I know, I'm living with a permanent ponytail at the minute and kind of just scraping it back and leaving a little bit, but I don't know who's struggling most with the lack of hairdressers, me or Spud. I mean, Spud he's got dreadlocks coming over his face at the minute.
I know, it's a real problem, isn't it, actually, the groomers and things.
How are you coping with Bill?
Well,
little Pomeranian. She's very, for anybody who doesn't know, Ross has got rotties and a little pom. How's she coping, or how are you coping with that?
Well, I never cope with her particularly well. I'm not a very good dog groomer at all. So I just tend to, because she's a pretty rough and tough little dog. So if there's a puddle, she'll go and lay in it. If there's mud, she'll run through it. She spends half of her time sort of ginger on the top and black at the bottom. So I just tend to cut bits out, which is easier than trying to groom and things. So yeah, I give her a little brush, give her a bath, and then cut bits out. Twigs and things like that.
Yeah, I've been doing that with Spud. I've been hacking it into him. So he's got, when he gets groomed, because he's a boy, he gets a really short cut on his tummy, just in front of his willy, because people who've only got bitches won't probably realise this, but if you've got a dog and they've got long fur, then they do end up weeing on that tummy, or it ends up a bit matted and a bit gooey and horrible. So I always get that cut when he goes to the groomer. I always get that cut really, really short.
Yeah.
So he has like a short middle, and then he has his long bits at the side, just so he looks like a cocker again, rather than a dog that's been rumped. But it's all getting a bit long, so I'm going to have to get in there with my feathering scissors.
Oh dear, go careful with those scissors.
Put my hand up for it. Let's cut this back.
Yeah. Poor old Spud, oh my goodness.
I know. Oh, it's all pretty gross, isn't it?
Yeah, well, part of dog. Well, we were talking about poo last time, weren't we? So it's all part of dog ownership, isn't it?
I know. I was thinking of you today, actually, on my dog walk when I started poo picking, and I thought we're gonna get straight on our favourite topic, which is dog poo.
Yeah, exactly.
And anal glands. We didn't actually talk about anal glands last time.
No,
which is my favourite topic.
I can't think why we wouldn't have.
So the reason whenever you go on to anal glands when we talk about dog poo is because the firmer the poo, it kind of massages the anal glands and keeps them nice and healthy and empty, whereas dogs who got sloppy poos quite often have problems with their anal glands as well.
I mean, I'm really lucky. I have never, ever in my whole time of dog ownership had to clean my dog's anal glands or have them cleaned at the vets or anything. No. I've done other people's dogs for them occasionally.
You haven't?
Yeah, that's never particularly pleasant, is it?
Oh my God, you've done other people's dogs' anal glands. That's disgusting.
Yeah, I know. I've done a lot worse things than that.
Really?
But we won't talk about those.
We could.
Yeah, we could. I'm going a bit warm already.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah,
I know lots of things that make
had
you
a bit of
go
a
warm
hot
and
flush here.
cringy.
Yeah, exactly. Oh dear.
Oh my goodness. My dogs have never needed their anal glands done, like for the sake of the anal glands, but they have had swimmer's tail before, and
Oh yes.
had the anal glands done then to try and get them over swimmer's tail really quickly, because that really helps bring the feeling back into the tail quick. Right?
Yeah. It's funny actually, because talking about people call it limber tail and all sorts, don't know, different names for that, whereby the dogs, I don't know what causes it, but typically when they've been in cold water, if they've had a bath and you haven't dried them off properly, they get almost like a tail paralysis, don't they?
Yeah, and really cold, really cold, icy driving rain will cause it as well. And yeah, limber tail, swimmer's tail, cold tail, all of that lot.
Yeah.
And and if they use the tail as a rudder as well, and they're doing a lot of swimming and they're using the tail as a rudder, then that can cause it to go as well. And they don't really know what causes it. I mean, I think personally, it's when the sphincter muscles in the back end gets going to spasm and everything goes really tight because of the cold. I mean, you know, it's like when you're really cold, everything goes really tight. And I think that's what contributes to it, if not what causes it.
Yeah, I mean, all of my Rottweilers have had it at one time or another. I've never had another breed that's had it, but they've all had it, and luckily they seem to recover within sort of a day or so without any medication or anything. So I know people do give pain relief, but no, I've never had to do that. They've recovered literally within a day or so.
It tends to be dogs that use their tails a lot as rudders, because I mean that's what they do when they swim in their tail. They use the tail as rudders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite common, I guess, in gun dogs, labs and things, isn't it?
Really
if
common.
you're doing water breeds and things.
Yeah, and you know, really getting them nice and warm when they come out of the water. So, and one of the things we were going to talk about was dominance. So, that old chestnut, dirty word, disgusting word,
dirty dominance word. Yeah, I quite like talking.
What?
Yeah, I quite like talking about dominance. It's a strange. We always, you know, as you know, we do courses in dog aggression to dogs and people and whatever, and we always start on day one with, you know, in the morning we always bring up the word dominance because that is a classification type of aggression. So we always bring that up because sometimes when you mention it, you get faces pulling and everybody whispering. Do you know what I mean? Because it's got such a strange connotation. You know, when you hear the word, people all have a completely different interpretation of it, like this old-fashioned pack theory, you know, all of that. And,
when everyone talks about pack theory or dominance theory, it just makes me laugh and I go, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I know. It's strange that a word can have so many different meanings to different people when it's just a word.
Yeah, it's one of the first things I talk about in Pet Gun Dog. Get straight in there, you know, it's straight in there talking about dominance because people immediately, I mean, I can remember years ago when the dogs trusted the experiment or the project or whatever, and they used that to prove that there was no such thing as dominance in pet dogs, but that was only done on 19 neutered males.
Yeah.
During the time of their daily exercise. You know, if they chucked a bone in there or chucked a bitch in season in there, they would have had a very, very different picture rather than 19 neutered males having a sniff.
You don't even have to do that. You just have to go to an Akita breed show at the weekend and watch the male Akitas in the ring, and go to the Rottweiler breed shows and watch the male Rottweilers in the ring. Because when you're watching some of those shows, you hold your breath thinking, if someone drops a lead now, there's a problem. So you do see it, and it's more prevalent in, I mean, dominance to me is always kind of innate within the individual, and it's more prevalent in some dog breeds than others. And it is the individual kind of drive within that dog, really. But I remember years ago, there was a book written, or more of a pamphlet really, about dominance and how, you know, it's now being debunked, which is a word you hear all the time. I only ever hear that when you talk about dominance. I don't hear debunked ever in conversation anywhere else. Anyway, so this little pamphlet was written, and it said, I guess facetiously, that, you know, we think dogs are dominant and they want to take over the house and then take over the world. And of course, nobody ever thought that. We just know that some dogs have a drive to protect things that are inherently important to them. And that could be a tissue, it could be a bone, it could be a person, it could be a detail they've stolen. But it's whatever's intrinsically important to that individual dog.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it was after the study, I think it was around about the time of the study, the Dogs Trust, they started, rather than calling it dominance, they started calling it resource holding potential, the RHP of a dog. But it's just, you know, it's just wrapping a thing up in a different word. And I don't understand. I mean, you know, you as well, you've, like me, you've studied wolves, you've studied lots of different animals. I worked with horses for years. You know, I cut my teeth on horses. And I don't...
And they're cutting their teeth on you, I guess.
They did that as well. Had a couple of cracking bites and kicks. But it's like, you know, you look at horses and you just look at horses in a field, and there's always a dominant horses. In any social group, there is a pecking order. And if there's a pecking order, there has to be dominance there. There has to be somebody asserting, or some animal asserting, a higher energy, a higher energetic being, if you like, you know, a stronger being, which is going to put forward what it wants in a way that is not up for challenge. And so, you know, it's that whole thing where it's I can remember with Bart and Angus. So Bart was the stronger of the two dogs. He was quite, I mean, you remember Bart, he was quite a dominant, you know, very, very strong, dominant dog. And but that didn't mean he was trying to take over the world. He certainly wasn't aggressive, although he wouldn't take any nonsense from dogs, but he wasn't aggressive at all. And Angus was quite a low ranking dog, but he was quite strong.
Yeah.
But if Angus had a fluffy toy, Bart wouldn't go near him, because at that moment in time, Angus's energy was stronger in relation to the toy, and he was prepared to die to keep that fluffy toy. And Bart would just go, you know what, it's not that important to me. But in the pecking order, Bart was definitely higher. Angus would always defer to him. Going through doors, he would defer to him in relation to drinking, copying his leg. You know, Bart always did everything first.
Yeah. No, and I think people find it quite confusing, because people often say, how come, you know, if you've got a lower ranking dog or a lower status dog in the house, how come they can keep hold of resources and the other, perhaps higher status dog, like you just said, you know, leaves them alone? Well, because it's not important. You know, it's important to the individual dog. And like I just said, that kind of varies depending on the situation and the dog. And the problems arise when you have dogs that both have the same
drive.
Bart had the same drive for the cuddly toy as Angus did. Then that's when you have your little problems, because the drive to have the toy is equal in both individuals. So therefore, you end up with a little altercation, don't you?
A big.
Well, yes.
Like the dog being prepared to back down over the toy.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, and you do. You see it, and you know, I've witnessed several dog fights which are incredibly unpleasant for anybody that's you know, seen those and been involved in over resources. You know, typically you have a group of dogs that all get along very well, and then it really doesn't take much to light the touch paper over a bone or a smell or whatever it may be, to start, you know, causing a problem. But I filmed my dogs a couple of years ago now at feeding time, and I haven't yet put the film together, but I had 4 dogs, and they have a very clear social structure. So, you know, so I did this feeding routine where just to show how, when I fed one dog, a dog within my group, what the other dogs would do to that. So some, you know, if I put a bowl down for one of the dogs, sometimes all of the other dogs would defer and just leave the food. But if I fed a lower status dog, then Utz, the stronger dog, he would just pile in and eat the food. So, but they have a very clear structure of who can do what, which I don't think is the case in everybody, because it's all very fluid, isn't it, in social groups. But in mine, it's very clear the status of each individual.
I think it's fluid at a moment in time. So I think generally you have a dog that is more senior ranking or higher status or has higher energy, like when people walk into a room, you can go, oh my goodness, this person's important. They don't say anything, they just it's their demeanor, isn't it? And so I think that's always there within a pack, and I will call it a pack because that is the term for more than one dog. It's called a pack. The collective noun for dogs is a pack, so I'm going to call it a pack. And so within a pack, you will have, a pack living with you, you will have a dog whose energy is naturally stronger, who's naturally a high-born dog, if you like, for one of the term. It's a high-born dog. It's probably, the one that was on the nipple first, so therefore it was stronger, more robust, its energy was stronger, it was able to climb over the other dogs. So everything about it indicates status and the highness of bone. But then on a daily basis, it might be fluid over things like toys, bones, beds, people. But when push comes to shove, that rank is still there. And I see it with Dante and Spud, actually. I've got a video of it. I filmed it a couple of years ago. And I did put it out there, and I might put it out there again, of the dogs having a drink. So Dante's quite happily having a drink. Spud comes over to him, intent on getting a drink. Dante takes 2 paces back. Spud has a drink, walks away. Dante comes in, finishes drinking, and then Spud just walks past him, and Dante doesn't finish. He doesn't move away from the water. And it was that intention of energy. So Spud came in, I wanted a drink. Dante went, whoa, okay, you can have it. And then when Spud came over without the intention of having a drink, Dante didn't bother moving.
No, exactly. And you see all this sort of low-level communication all the time, don't you, in the dogs? I don't know whether because we're looking for it, because what we do for a living, and I do spend probably a silly amount of time watching my dogs, really, just interact and whatever. But it's interesting, isn't it? And I guess, I don't know whether everybody looks at their dogs, but you do. You see really these clear communication signals that we would miss, the human observer, but the dogs seem to have this very clear communication system.
Yeah, absolutely. And people do generally miss things like, I do find it funny when behaviourists or trainers say you shouldn't you shouldn't stop a dog from displaying aggression. You should we talked about it last time, distract and what was the word you used? Distract and something.
Void.
Distract and avoid, rather than actually saying, no, that's not acceptable, you can't do that. And so they say, no, well, if you stop the dog from doing that, then you'll break all the communication signals. But actually, that's the last thing generally in the communication is the dog responding. You have, the glare, the freeze, the turn away. There's loads of stuff that goes on before the dog actually starts moving forward with aggression.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's the same as that. As the last couple of years, people have been saying they shouldn't punish a dog for growling. And again, the word punish is a weird word, but that's what they say. Shouldn't punish the growl, because if you do that, then you suppress that, and then the dog moves to the next action, which might be to bite you or to bear its heel, whatever that is for that dog. But I just think that's ridiculous. People were saying, "Oh, I thank my dog for growling at me, so it didn't have to bite me." And I think, well, there's a famous little film with it on, but thank the dog. Thank you for growling at me.
I remember that. We got in a lot of trouble for that film.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah. But no, it's ridiculous. If the dog growls at me, then I tell it off. I don't want that dog growling at me. It doesn't move to the next level. It stops growling at me. That's it.
Well, all you have to do is look at how dogs communicate with each other, and But then also, if you look at the science of learning, you know, people are like really in the science at the minute. But if you just look at how we learn and how the brain, how malleable the brain is, setting up connections. If, I mean, I've talked about this loads, and when we used to teach together, my whole bit was on how you learn and how the brain sets up the neural pathways. And so if you set a neural pathway on the brain and it stops using it, you know, you stop using that behaviour, then the neural pathway will be reclaimed, and the neural pathway will cease to exist, or it will take a lot to then resurrect it. And so if you're allowing your dog to growl or bark or continue to go down the neural pathway as a response, then that neural pathway is just going to get more and more reinforced, and the response will be quicker. And so we have to stop the dog from going down, or you know, humans as well. You know, when I gave up smoking, I had to stop doing the habit of smoking to the point where I couldn't go out for a coffee, because in my head the neural pathway was go for a coffee, have a cigarette. And so I had to stop the neural pathway completely, and I stopped going out for a coffee, because to me that path led to smoking. And so I stopped going out for coffees, come up with a completely different habit, set up a new neural pathway, and then eventually I could go out for a coffee again, although not at the minute.
Not at the moment.
Not at the minute.
Nowhere.
There's nowhere to go for a coffee.
No.
But it's the same thing with dogs, isn't it? You know, if we allow them to keep using the neural pathway, then all we're going to do is reinforce that reaction. And so
you see it all of the time with, you know, when you go to see dogs that display aggression to people, or dogs, or you know, dogs that perhaps are dominantly aggressive towards their owners. So dogs that resource guard, and typically dominance aggression is over possession and position. So possession of items that they deem important, or position on furniture or beds or people or whatever. And if you stop that, so that, to me, dominance aggression always has an innate component. So it's not that we cause that by doing things, that is the dog that we have, and then we either compound it or we stop it. And you see it all of the time, that aggression increases because people aren't expecting their little cocker spaniel to growl at them at 9 weeks old over food, and it might be funny or it might be shocking or whatever it is, but because they're not expecting it, they don't stop it. And if you can extinguish it at that age, then, like you said, that stops the action, and then we'll rub along more harmoniously. If you don't stop it, it strengthens and it fuels, and through successful repetition of carrying out that action and it being rewarded because it gets to keep the tissue that it's just ripped up or whatever it is, then, you know, it continues and escalates into different areas. And we see dogs, and I mentioned the Cocker Spaniel because they're one of the breeds that I see most commonly for that type of aggression towards their owners. And you see dogs at, you know, 4 or 5 years of age that are really off the charts aggressive towards their owners, when if they'd sought help when the puppy was 8 weeks, 10 weeks, then it would have been a lot easier to resolve those issues.
It happens really without people knowing that. Can you remember seeing a dog years ago? The dog's not with us anymore, chocolate Labrador, and the owners, you know, gave me permission to write an article about it, so I don't mind mentioning it. But this chocolate lab, it was a puppy farmed dog, and within 9 months it had to have its hips done, and it was up on the settee. So how it started was, it was up on the settee with the owners, and the nudged it and it growled and went, "Oh, you know, have I hurt you? I'm really sorry," and they backed off from the dog. And then they praised it. They didn't. They went, "Oh, there, are you okay?" But as far as the dog's concerned, it was being praised for reacting with aggression. And so very quickly the dog learned to get its own way through displaying aggression, dominant aggression to the owners. You know, it wanted the settee, it wanted them off the settee. And it escalated over. I mean, I ended up seeing the dog not for aggression. I went to see the dog because they wanted to bring their daughter's dog into the house, and they were both dog aggressive. They didn't tell me it was people aggressive as well.
That's a favourite trick of people, isn't it?
I know. Let's not tell this person who's coming to help us with my aggressive dog, aggressive to people, until it attacks them. And
Yeah,
so it built up to the point where they had reinforced the behaviour through going, oh, there, don't worry, or no, don't do that. That's not very good. You shouldn't be doing that. To the point where if the dog got on the settee and they went into the room, the dog would actually attack the door to prevent them
yeah,
going in. And every time they went out, they had put chairs on the settee and chairs on the table, because the second the dog got on one of the chairs and the dog thought these were the highest possible resources, um, as soon as you started opening the door, the dog would attack the door and it would grab that door handle. And, it was quite scary.
yeah.
But that is all because it wasn't nipped in the bud initially.
No, well, people are, and obviously people get very scared of their dogs. I mean, being on the receiving end of an aggressive dog is not pleasant,
No.
and people get very scared, so they try to avoid triggers. If you know that the dog's going to growl at you when it's eating, don't go near it. If you know it's going to growl when it's on the sofa, then don't go near it. And all of those strange actions that people carry out seem to compound it as well. When I saw a man, it's amazing what people live with and put up with. I saw a man with a 5-year-old Cocker Spaniel that was just attacking him on a daily basis, just, in all sorts of situations. And he'd put up with that for years, which I found remarkable. But, very high level aggression towards his owner.
But it's the catalyst, isn't it? I mean, on my forms, I've got what was the catalyst of phoning me. And I can remember seeing this little schnauzer. And I can remember talking to them and I ended up having to hold the phone away from my ear because the dog was just barking constantly. And
Yeah,
and she got me out because the dog was barking and they wouldn't shut up. And I
yeah,
break collar on it. And within 2 seconds it went and lay in his bed and stopped barking. And then the
yeah.
son dropped something. He was I can't remember if he was autistic or had ADHD. He was an older child. So, I mean, he wasn't a child, he was a man, he was in his 20s. But he dropped something and the schnauzer dived out of the bed and attacked him. And
Yeah,
I was completely flummoxed. It was like, oh my God, is this how your dog normally behaves? He got me out because the dog doesn't stop barking.
yeah,
But
no.
the fact that it was attacking the lad 3 or 4, 5, 6 times a day wasn't on the spectrum, because it wasn't they were managing it. He knew he was going to get bit, so he kind of did things quickly so that the dog wouldn't bite him too hard. But the thing that called me out for was the barking.
I know. Well,
And
as we were just saying, joking about when you said, come to my house and I won't tell you my dog's aggressive. I mean, it's really, sometimes this job is really quite dangerous when people are calling you out saying, I've got a dog that's excessive barking, or it's separation anxiety, or it's peeing in the house, and you get there and the dog's really aggressive towards people. And you're ill prepared for that, because that's not what you're expecting at all. And I've lots of colleagues that have found themselves in that situation whereby they're in a house and they're actually, we need to deal with this problem above the rest of the things that you've got going on, because legally this is the one that's going to get you in trouble, and it's dangerous. And yeah, really. I mean, one of the films that we play on one of our workshops, which I know you've seen, is again another spaniel, Springer Spaniel. And this was some years ago when, so now I always visit people in their homes, but luckily, this occasion, the lady brought the dog to our offices, and she came because the dog was aggressive towards dogs. And fortunately, because dogs used to come in there and pee around the place, we used to restrict the dogs on a dog parking hook. So just put their lead over a little hook next to the owner so that we could talk without, the owners having to keep managing the dog and us watching for it weeing or whatever. And so luckily, dog's on a parking hook. And I just happened to move my chair forward on wheels, and the dog went bonkers at me. And just the highest level of aggression that you see that hasn't been trained, ripped off padded arms and all sorts of things, incredibly dangerous. And she came for aggression towards dogs, which is kind of irrelevant, really, when you've got a dog like that living with your kids.
It's amazing, but because it happens so gradually. Sometimes, quite often it happens so gradually, and we're amazing at adapting as a species. People are amazing at adapting. And as you said, it's like, oh, well, I'll not do that because it'll happen with my dog, or I'll not do that because my dog will do this, or I'll not go on that walk because if I go on that walk, it'll kick off when it meets a dog behind the gate. And so it's kind of the way I describe it, and certainly the way I describe allergies, which is very similar. And I've just done a big quantum leap as I normally do, but it's like when you've got a blocked sink in the kitchen. It hasn't just got blocked when it overflows. It started getting blocked when the sink started building up on the U-bend, and then it built up and built up and built up, and then eventually nothing will go down the sink. And that's kind of what happens in our job, isn't it? There's these little behaviours that the owners can't cope with, but it's not until they're at screaming point and the sink's overflowing that they get in touch with us, because they literally cannot cope anymore. And they'll have been living with the dog like that for 5 years, and they phone you up and say, I can't come to see you for 6 weeks, but I need to see you now. But hang on a minute, you've been living with this for 6 years.
No. Once they get to the point of we need help now. Don't want to see you next week. I want you to come today. Like you said, putting up with it for 6 years, but I need you to come today immediately. But no, I've just been working with a shadow chasing dog, and again, 3-year-old female. And she's been chasing shadows, like bits of light and movement, like your watch reflection, or if you open the cupboard and the
fridge
makes a pattern on the wall, anything like that. And not only is she chasing shadows, but she's obsessively looking for them. Well, she was, luckily, thank goodness, we're doing all right. But no, and of course they'd put up with that for a long time, and their behaviour is just embedded. And like you said, it's built up. I mean, once the little puppy started doing it, they found it funny initially, it's cute. And then, from that point on, it's just got worse and worse and worse until breaking point, really. Can't cope with it anymore because it's barking and scratching at the walls and jumping and scrabbling around in the garden, constantly barking. So, but luckily they're doing good. Fingers crossed, we're doing good with that at the moment.
And
which is hard.
It's difficult with puppies, because what's really cute and funny with a puppy isn't really cute and fun with an adult dog with its full complement of teeth in, adult teeth in.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, it's amazing that people don't have the imagination to realise that, their 9-week-old puppy is soon going to be, a 45-kilo dog, so that, you don't want certain behaviours, do you? You want to kind of stop and suppress them before that leads to problems. But then that's our job, isn't it? That's what we do. So that's, luckily we can go and help.
And I mean, it's a really interesting profession to get into, and I know a lot of people who do training or do behaviour don't go on and specialise in aggression the way that we have. For lots of reasons, and I kind of don't blame them, really. I mean, I've got Kevlar sleeves. The Kevlar sleeves, when you go out, make sure you don't get bit, or if you do get bit, it's not a puncture. It's if you are bit, it's more of a crush rather than a puncture.
I don't wear my Kevlar sleeves on my arm. I wear them on my legs.
Do you?
I put like great big long socks. I mean, absolutely hideous. But I'll get dressed in more. Particularly if I'm going to see a small dog that's aggressive to people, then I'll put put them above my socks, like above my boots, under my jeans, and
And I mean, it's a good kit having the Kevlar sleeves. Touch wood, I have it.
Yeah. No, it just saves a little bit, doesn't it? But mind you, the last time I wore them, it was for a little Jack Russell crossbreed, and so I thought I'll put these things because they only come up to your knees. They're not like it's not like a full body bite suit. So put my little socks on, and luckily, I went through muzzle conditioning with them before I went there, and of course the dog just launches up into your groin aggressively. So my Kevlar socks were neither here nor there, really, but thankfully, Thank goodness for muzzles.
It didn't come up high enough.
Didn't come up high enough.
Was it muzzled?
Yes.
Oh, that's a bit handy.
No, it wasn't handy. It was because I told them that they should go through. They went through a process of muzzle conditioning. Luckily, because I would have been badly bitten and very badly injured. But yes, it's a risk that we take with this occupation, isn't it? Unfortunately, it's it comes with the turf.
And you can't always trust what people have written. You can't.
What do you mean you can't always?
Well, you can never. I went to see two dogs. One of them was a rescue dog, and it wasn't the rescue dog I was going to see. It was the other one who apparently was kicking off since they brought the rescue dog home. And I went in and very foolishly thought, right, okay, where's the original dog I was going to see? And this blooming rescue dog jumped up, launched itself up, and literally I had slather all over my face, and I actually felt its teeth on my face, and I couldn't believe I'd been so stupid, really, because I went in, saw the rescue dog, saw the dog that I was there to see, had absolutely no information at all about this rescue dog, because I wasn't there to see that dog, and wasn't expecting to see the dog in the room either, and we got it down, and it immediately just grabbed my arm.
Yeah.
It didn't bite, but it had hold of me, and it was, very, very dominant behaviour, hold my arm. And I thought, this is just madness. So, right, let's forget that dog. That dog's fine. Let's sort this dog out,
Yeah. I went to see, it's, we've all got thousands of stories, and I went to see two Dobermans a couple of years ago. Not like my recent visit to see the 5 Dobermans, that was haircut, but two Dobermans, and so I went to see this. The female was aggressive to dogs, then the male, they were these European Dobermans, so cropped ears and docked tails, so very difficult to read, and so the female that I went to see for aggression to dogs, she was very sweet, but the male, who I didn't go to see, was just this massive dog that just stood in the corner staring at me, and like I said, their body, that is so difficult to read unless you know them, and no, just stood there, very intimidating. Didn't do anything, just stood there looking at me for 2 hours.
Oh my God, especially with the pinced ears as well. Oh my goodness, that's they're really intimidating. Because they used to be, when I was growing up, you were probably only just born then. They used to be called the devil dogs. They were the ones that were in all the horror movies and.
Yeah, well, they're in all the old American films, aren't they? All these cropped and docked Dobermans and things. Yeah, no, they're very intimidating looking. But I went to see 5 a couple of weeks back in one house and for aggression, and that was interesting because I feel like this is not like a Jack Russell that's going to jump up and nip your bum. This is 5 Dobermans that could kill you. Yeah, rip you to pieces, couldn't they? So
easily.
Yeah, that was an interesting consult.
And how was that?
I'm here. I got out. It was interesting. Some of them, 3 of them were very nice. 2 of them were not very nice with people. But yeah, luckily I had my case and my book and
it helped.
Yeah, just sat on the chair, sat still, and did what we needed to do with the dogs that I went to see. But very interesting.
Have a low settee.
Of course, have a low settee. Nobody has an aggressive dog and they just sit on a stool in the kitchen. No, take a seat and pop down. There's the dog. Yeah.
You've got the dog kind of drooling over the top of your head.
Yeah, there is a shop whereby if you've got an aggressive dog, you have to go to this special sofa shop. So you buy the lowest possible sofa. So your visitors are virtually sitting on the floor with the dog towering above them.
And that tips your back so you can't move.
Yeah, great big. I don't know why. Yeah, I know. Constantly. I remember going to see a black Russian Terrier, they're huge.
Oh, huge things.
And she said, take a seat. And I sat down and just sunk into this sofa, like to sort of go right the way back, sunk into it. And the dog was just looming over the top of me. And I thought, this is fun.
Yeah.
But no, it's all part and parcel of what we do, isn't it?
It is. Have you got a favourite breed that you like to work with, behaviour-wise?
Um, interesting question. I've never been asked that before. Do you have a favourite breed
I'm
that I
full of
like?
interesting questions. Did you not know that? How long have you known me?
I don't know, full of something.
Thank you.
I don't. No, I don't. I don't think I do have a favourite breed that I. No.
Have you got a breed that you find most responsive to change?
I do quite like working with like the working cockers. I like those. Yeah, I find those quite malleable. Yeah, I like work. I mean, German shepherds and things like that I quite like working with. Yes, the dogs that probably I like working probably more with the dogs that are designed to work with man. So the shepherding breeds, gun dog breeds, dogs that are more malleable. The huskies, the Akita, some of the other sort of Spitz type breeds I find all quite difficult because they're so independent and you know, do their own thing, really don't need to be involved with you, really.
No, they don't need to be involved. I mean, I find, I mean, interesting that you said about the cockers being more malleable because they can be seriously off the scale aggressive as well, can't they?
Yeah, completely. They are definitely number one on my list that I see for aggression towards people.
For aggression to people.
Within the family group, yeah. So not aggressive towards people typically outside the family group, although they can be, of course. But mostly for dominance type aggression that we were talking about in the family group or in the pack, then yeah, the Cocker Spaniel, both the working cocker and the showline cocker, definitely number one.
I mean, I find that as well, and people will say to me, "Oh, no, you know, gun dogs aren't aggressive, or they're not that bad." Or I can remember years ago, somebody dismissing me because I worked with gun dogs. Not they were new and new to the profession, and it was like, "Oh, well, you just work with gun dogs," and it's like, "Oh my God, have you ever had an aggressive Labrador coming at you?" Because of the breeding. And the fact that they are working dogs, they're really tenacious and they just never stop coming at you because that's what they've been bred to do, you know. If you've got a working dog and you send it in a thicket of brambles after a bird and they go in and get a scratch nose and they go through, I'm not going in there, that hurts, I'm not going in, then it's all done. We breed them to never give up. And so, you know, they'll keep going and going and going until their faces are bleeding to get to the bird. And so faced with a person who they want to nail, they'll just keep going back.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, I mean, there are some breeds, of course, that are more predisposed to various types of aggression than others.
Yeah.
But equally, some of the most aggressive dogs, I think like we've already spoken about Spaniels a lot, I've seen some really nasty, I know you're a Golden Retriever fan, some really nasty Golden Retrievers, really, really aggressive towards people. It's not common, it's not the majority, of course, is it? But, you know, there are exceptions to every rule.
And I mean, I think a lot of that is breeding. There is aggression in the Golden Retriever lines, and yeah, I get all soft over Goldies, you know. But do you think some of it with the Labs and the Goldies and with the Cockers as well, because they became really popular when Prince William got his Cocker, they became really popular, too popular. You know, lots of people were getting them, not realising what they were getting. So do you think a lot of it is that with the Labs and definitely with the Goldies, you know, they've got this lovely black mouth, black eyes, so when they grin, the kind of, you think they're smiling at you and they're not necessarily smiling. But do you think a lot of it is because, oh, well, it's an Andrex puppy, so therefore I don't have to train it because it's an Andrex puppy, and then before you know it, it's no longer an Andrex puppy?
Yeah, it could be, but I think also breeding has a lot to play. I mean, when you're breeding, as you know, we've done lots of conversations, you and I have spoken about this lots, but when you're breeding for aesthetics, temperament is alters as a result of that. So when you're breeding to the Kennel Club breed standard, your Golden Retriever has to have, you know, be as close to that breed standard as possible. So whether that requires a dark mouth, dark eye, you know, tells you how long the ears should be, how long the tail should be,
45 degree angle of the shoulder blade. Yeah.
All of that. And with all breeds, I mean, all breeds have a breed standard. And when you're trying to breed, because that's what dog showing is trying to breed the dog closest to that breed standard.
Yeah.
And if you're not, you know, if you've got a dog that's a little bit sharp or a little bit fearful or whatever, but that dog matches, you know, your idea of the breed standard, yeah, then actually, and the problem that you have is when you have a popular stud dog, so a nice look, you've got a lovely golden retriever that's a bit growly and a bit grumbly, and everybody likes that dog and they want to have a litter of puppies with that dog. You don't just have one puppy per litter, you have 5 to 10 or whatever.
Yep.
And that dog's used on a whole lot of bitches. So you end up with 50, 100, maybe more offspring from that one aggressive golden retriever. So, and I think that's the thing with Cocker Spaniels, you know, popularity-wise, we had the, you know, that rage syndrome, I don't know whether it was late 80s, early 90s, people were freaking out because the dogs were, you know, this cocker rage. But yeah, I think breeding has a lot to do with it and popularity. And if Cocker Spaniels are popular because of the latest film or because of, you know, Prince, whoever's got one, then of course there's a demand and lots of unscrupulous people will supply that demand. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same with these designer dogs, isn't it? I kind of had to shut my eyes when I said that. I couldn't really believe I'm going down this road, but it's the same with a lot of the designer dogs, you know. The doodle dogs. There's a lot of gun dogs stolen and then bred for these designer dogs, you know, and it's just it's appalling. And when they're creating these designer dogs, and I'm not saying all the breeders of like labradoodles or golden doodles or whatever doodle, they're not all the same, but they aren't necessarily doing the health test so they can get and they're not looking at temperament either, so they can get a dog that has got a really terrible temperament and hasn't potentially got good genes either, it's carrying health issues, and then they're putting that with another dog that they haven't checked out the temperament or the genealogy health wise, and then they're putting out like 10 puppies and you've got no idea what you're going to get. You've got no idea which dominant gene is going to come forward.
No, and we see it a lot. We see oh no, we see it a lot, particularly at the moment in cockapoos. Yeah, dominant gene. In cockapoos we see it a lot. I mean, some people have lovely cockapoos that are quite, dare I say, easy to manage or easy to train or quick to learn, whatever. But some of them, again, they bring with them, you know, the worst traits of both breeds, and you end up with, you know, the aggressive nature of some cockers, and then you know, the high energy levels of the poodle, and you just, you know, you end up with a really very, very difficult dog to manage, which of course is not what people sign up for. They, you know, most people see a cockapoo, they want a nice little cuddly family dog, and sometimes you get a really hardcore working type dog in the shape of a cockapoo.
Yeah, I know. You get both ends, don't you? You get the independence of the poodle and the, you know, the strength of the poodle and the madness of the cocker.
Yeah, and the high energy needs and exercise requirements and things. So it's very difficult because you don't, I mean, unlike perhaps most pedigree dog breeds, you really don't know. And they're, like I said, they're always exceptions. You could be really unlucky and go and buy a golden retriever and it be vile. You know, it could, but you know, we can only do the best that we can do when selecting puppies. But when you have crossbreeds, you really don't know quite what you're going to get.
So I'm going to talk to you about nature and nurture. This could be a completely different podcast, couldn't it? But you know what? People have said to me the half-hour ones are too short and they want them for like 50 minutes to an hour. So I'm going to launch into talking about breeding, nature versus nurture, because I've got different breeds. I've got the labs, and that goes down through the boy line. So I've got Bart, and then I had Ziggy, who was his nephew. And I've got Danny, who is his nephew. But then I also had Angus as a Goldie, and I got Spud, which is a cocker. And Kenny, my husband, always says all my dogs turn out the same,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of breed. They all pretty much turn out the same. Mad as cheese, but they all have that same, like the Graham stamp, if you like. And so that's got to be nurture rather than nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because of different breeds. So,
Yeah.
and I'm going to tell you a story about Angus. When I was teaching in Manukau, I couldn't go to club one night. And I got a phone call the next day to say that one of the trainers had been in hospital. She'd been bitten on the face and needed stitches by a golden retriever. And the golden retriever was 9 months old. And so the first question was, well, why was it in a puppy class? And it turned out that this golden retriever had never been trained. It was 9 months old, really big Goldie, had never been trained. So they put it in the puppy class. And the trainer was trying to get it to go into a down. When she went near it, the dog jumped up and took a chunk out of her face. And so the next week I turned up the class, knowing that this Goldie had just put somebody in the hospital. And I said, where did you get your Goldie from? And she told me. And I said, that's Angus's brother. That's Angus's full litter mate. And so Angus wasn't aggressive, but this dog was. And it was because it had never been trained. It never had any boundaries. It had never had anything, coming back to that relationship with raising your dog with boundaries, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. This dog hadn't had that. So when somebody bent over it, it said, I'm not putting up with that nonsense, and it nailed her.
Yeah. That's two
dogs from the same litter, full litter brothers. Completely different.
Yeah, I mean, what I often say to clients when I go and see people with their, dog aggressive dog, that I believe is kind of, there's a huge innate component to that, then I will say to them, it's the luck of the draw. Had you picked the litter mate, had you picked one of the others out of the litter, you might not have had this problem. And I think nurture and nature, I think it's both. I mean, I had one of my Rottweilers, Roke, he's 8 or 9 now. And when I had him at 7.5 weeks, I think. And I went took him to Battersea Park. So he was off the lead at Battersea Park, meeting lots of dogs, because that's really important for that breed. They need lots of social interaction with dogs during that time. So anyway, he was off the lead at Battersea Park, 7.5 weeks old, cute little puppy, and a lady picked him up, dog walker, Lynn, picked him up to give him a cuddle because he was cute and he bit her face. So he was really a nasty puppy. He was inherently aggressive over certain things, and clearly disliked being picked up, manhandled, and food removed, and all sorts of things like that. Which was fine because we dealt with that early on, so that's not a thing. And now it's completely fine, and people can stroke him, and you can, take his food away and whatever else. But I think had he been in another environment where people weren't quite so prepared for that, then it would escalate and progress. And I think it's very, when you start looking at different breeds, because obviously all breeds have these predisposed behaviours. That some of us find attractive, some of us less. We all find different things appealing, don't we? But I think, for example, so the Akita breed that I keep picking on. So we're going to have Cocker Spaniel breeders.
Going back to the Akitas, don't you?
I know. Yeah, they're all going to be writing letters. Yeah. No, but the thing is, with saying an Akita, because I often hear that it's all in how you raise dogs. There's no such thing as a bad dog, it's a bad owner, and blah, blah, blah. And that makes my blood boil, because there are some dogs that are born quite,
unsuited to live in a human environment.
Yeah, and there are, there are some people born intrinsically bad. But with, let's say, for example, take the Akita, for example, if you do everything possible, you get a male Akita, you get it at the right age, you socialise it to the book with other dogs, and you put in all the effort, and you train it, and you do everything. Most times when the dog gets to sexual maturity, it will not tolerate other male dogs. So that is not a lack of anything that you've done. That is inherent within that dog. And yes, it will play with other dogs and it'll be lovely, and until the point that it gets to that sort of sexual maturity and it decides that that is not how life is, gambling about with other dogs. And so I think, you know, depending on the breed that you have, obviously it depends on what input you need to counter that or to balance that. But I don't think we can always just blame the owners and say it was your fault.
No. I mean, I find it really sad that here we are in 2020 and people are still blaming the owner. He's like, oh, there's no such thing as a bad dog. Well, actually, I've been at the wrong end of bad dogs, and they have been removed from society permanently because they're not in the temperament where they're not going to seriously damage somebody.
Yeah.
And you can't ever say, well, maybe if you brought the dog up differently, maybe this, maybe that, maybe the other, because you just don't know.
The thing is, you can't make
time.
Yeah, and you can't make a comparison. I mean, when you were saying about Angus and Angus's litter brother, we could say, well, you're fabulous and you're amazing, did a great job with Angus.
Well, of course I did.
Of course, that's true. But no, had you had his brother instead of Angus, that doesn't mean that he wouldn't display aggression. You don't, because you don't know, because you can't make the comparison because it's not the same dog, is it? It's like comparing two children. You can't say, you know, you see two children in a home, they're both very, very different. One's an introvert, one's an extrovert, one likes, you know, colouring, one likes running. They're completely different individuals, and just because they're brothers, unfortunately doesn't enable us to make that comparison. No. To know, does it?
I mean, I've got 4 sisters, and we're all the chalk and cheese. You know, we've all got different interests, we've all got different careers, we've all got different, you know, dog people, cat people kind of thing. So you can't, and I'm going to do a plug now. So, you know, I updated the Peck and Dog books, and one of the things that I've included, funnily enough, one of the things I've included is comparing it, like if you have tumbled stones, if you get a rock and you chip off stones from the rock and then put them in a tumble and polish them, they will all come out differently, even though they've come from the same rock at the same time. And they've all been tumbled exactly the same way.
Yeah.
They're unique. They've got their own.
Yeah, all completely different. Yeah. And it's exactly like dogs. I mean, for those, you know, for people that do, you know, have breeder litter or keep in touch with people that have dogs that, you know, they've bred the offspring, yeah, they'll tell you. I mean, it's not, they're all different. They're all completely different. But some of them have similarities, of course. But yeah, you can't judge one by another, can you?
No, you can't.
But it's an interesting, it's always an interesting discussion. But I think nature and nurture, you know, it's all of it, isn't it? It's both. Like we were saying earlier on, talking about dominance, which seems to be the theory of the theme of the podcast. But oh God, I had no idea where I was going with that.
I mean, everything contributes to it. So, you know, in everything contributes. So, you know, you could take, you know, even twins. You know, so like we'll get off dogs for a second. So you could take 2 human twins, so identical twins, and you could feed them differently, and you could educate them differently. Is the intrinsic behaviour still there because they're twins? Identical twins? Is it not? You know, do they share that? Do they share that all the way back? I mean, when I did 3-in-1 concepts, we did something called generations, where traits are passed down through DNA and through the generations. So like a look or a mannerism would come down through generations. That won't go away through nurturing.
No.
That is there. That has come down, and it's now called epigenetics, is what it's now being called as epigenetics, where it's like energetic stuff that has come down through a line.
Yeah.
That won't go away regardless of what you do with them. That is there, you know.
Yeah. No, exactly, and I think it's the same, you know, as you can't change a dog aesthetically, other than like clipping its fur and whatever. But I mean, you know, if you've got a golden retriever, it's golden or white or whatever colour they are now. You can't change their coat colour. So why would you be able to change the very core of what they are? So if they do come predisposed with certain behaviours, like the drive to chase, or I mean, some dogs have a really high prey drive, don't they? Like a very strong innate drive to pursue and kill squirrels, cats, rabbits, whatever it is. And, you know, I see extreme cases of that. Lots of dogs don't have that, but some dogs do. And that is, yes, experiences, you know, if your dog has 50 repetitions of chasing a squirrel, then that, you know, fuels it and compounds it. But there has to be the spark there initially.
Yeah.
You know, there has to be the drive, the desire to do it. And some, you know, with sports dogs and things, we want some of that drive, which is why we breed dogs with that focus, so that we can train them and work with them. But you know, going into a pet home and having your dog legging it all around the park, chasing everything is you know, very difficult. But you know, it's intrinsic, it's innate within certain dogs.
But then, I mean, that's their nature. So their nature, their intrinsic nature, is to chase. But then the nurturing element comes in through training, where we teach them self-control. The behaviour is still there, and it's still intrinsic. It's still very much a part of them.
Yeah.
But what we're doing through nurturing and training is to teach them self-control, so that drive is there.
Yeah.
But they're taking control of themselves until we release them.
Yeah. Yeah, and we focus it in different areas where possible, don't we? Utilise that to our advantage and everything else. But yeah, no, I think that there are predisposed behaviours within breeds and within individuals. Some of those we can alter really successfully. Others we can alter less so, because that drive to do whatever, whether it's to guard resources or to chase squirrels, sometimes the drive is incredibly strong. But it's like, you know, it's different levels, isn't it? Some dogs half-heartedly chase a squirrel, others are all out to kill it. So, you know, there are different levels of different behaviours, and you never quite know what you're going to get, do you? But you can do your homework, you can research breeds, but you never quite know what you're going to get. But I think the key thing is to highlight problems early on, or you know, not even problems, but behaviours that you see that you think actually in the future that might not be so cool, and work before it develops and before it escalates and before the dog has experience, to squash that and move it in another direction.
To focus the energy, to channel the energy into something more positive, rather than something that would be detrimental, not necessarily detrimental to the dog, but detrimental to your relationship with the dog. Yeah,
I mean, take for example, you know, border collies. So I compete in working trials. Well, I say that I haven't for a while actually, but I should be. But yeah, so typically a lot of the dogs there are border collies. So they are bred. Border collies are bred to cover miles and miles and miles each day, herding sheep. That is what they are designed to do. They're designed to chase and to run, and again to listen and to work with man. But when you see those dogs in apartments in, you know, central London or whatever, the dog has that intrinsic drive to run and to chase, right? And if you don't fulfill that, then those behaviours start to come out elsewhere. So whether that's chasing cars, whether that's chasing joggers and nipping them, whether it's displaying bizarre sort of OCD compulsive behaviours in the house, like chasing shadows, chasing, like barking through the window,
herding children.
Yeah, the energy and the energy level and the drive has to come out. And if you do agility, border collies are amazing. If you do working trials, they're amazing, because you take that drive and you utilise it and you fulfil the dog's needs through other actions. And if you're unable to fulfil their needs, then they start to fulfil them somehow themselves, because they have to come out. They have to come out. Border collie can't just lay in front of your fire all day. Some do, like I said, exceptions to everything.
Exceptions.
But on the whole, then no, that's not cool.
Yeah, no, it's not. And it is, our job is to help people find things that will fulfill their dog's needs and make them easy to live with, and teach self-control and channel that energy in a way that works for the whole family.
Yeah, and also part of our job is to be realistic and to help people redefine their expectations, because some people are unrealistic. You know, can you come and help me, you know, sort out my border collie and I only walk it for 20 minutes in the morning? Yes, I can come and help you, but we're going to have to increase the exercise. And if you can't do that, then we're on the road to nowhere, aren't we? So people's expectations need managing, I think, as well.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yes. Both ends of the lead. I don't know which is my favourite to work with.
Yeah. It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
And let's not talk about dominant owners.
No. Well, there's a few of those around, isn't there?
There's one or two of those around. Oh, yeah. She said, grinning.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Oh, yes.
No, well, that's what makes it all cool, isn't it? Seeing different, you know, different people, different lifestyles and different attitudes, different personalities.
Oh, it's a great job. Anybody who's thinking about getting into behaviour work, it's just such a wonderful job. It's challenging at times, and you know, you have your work cut out for you, and for me, one of the most important things is to stand up and be counted and do what you believe is right for the dog and right for the family, and not bow to fashions or trends or I can't do this because,
No.
you know, it'll go against it'll go against the amount of likes that I get on Facebook.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Stand up and be counted and do what needs to be done.
Totally.
The dog and the owner.
Yeah, no, definitely. And luckily, you and I have both got a lot of colleagues and people around us that we can chat to, and that we all do support each other in what we do, really. So we're not on our own, and we've got people to chat to, which makes all of the difference. And now I can imagine that if you do work on your own and you don't have a network around you, that you can be easily swayed to think that you might be doing things wrong, that you should change your methods and, you know, use different ideologies and things because of peer pressure. But like I said, don't do that. We are working for the dog and our client, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've hit on the head. It's like when you do court work, you are working for the courts and not. You've got to be completely unbiased and work for the courts. And it's the same when you're working with somebody's dog. You've got to work for that dog and that family, and do the best for them that you can, regardless of everything else that's going on around you in relation to social media.
Yeah, exactly. Because what we're there for is, if we can't resolve the issues, then people can't live with the issues. So the dog is in rescue or euthanized or passed on to whoever, and that's not cool, is it? So we want, you know, in order to keep the dogs living with their owners and having a nice life, then we have to, work to do what we can do to facilitate that. Yes.
Yes. It's been so good talking to you. I can't believe it's an hour, I think.
Is it an hour?
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh my goodness, look at that. Chatting with my mate over a coffee, talking about dogs.
Yeah, and you didn't manage to get any cream on your nose, so that's good.
I thought I had a little bit of froth. You saw me wipe it off at the beginning, and I took a drink and thought, oh, I've been left with froth. But you were so busy talking, I thought I could just really subtly do it.
No, you don't know, do you? Oh, God, no, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, at least I'm not drinking. We used to, so a little bit of background is me and Ross, I used to live in Marlborough and Ross was in London, and we used to meet at Costa, and we would start the morning with coffees, and then we'd get bored with coffees, we'd get all coffeeed out. And we'd go on to, what was it? Was it a slushy or something?
What were they called? Was it Costa?
In Costa?
I don't know, they were like mango, weren't they? Like cold ice.
Coolies. Mango coolies.
That's it, yeah.
Oh my God, I would take and I would always end up with brain freeze. I wouldn't be able to move with brain freeze.
Horrible.
Horrible.
I mean, funny for me, hilarious, but
hilarious.
No,
oh, my head.
Oh God. No.
Oh, I do miss those days. We should meet up in, I don't know, halfway up the country.
Yeah, where's halfway now? Somewhere.
I don't know.
Liverpool or something.
Liverpool, I think.
Yeah. Bit of a trek, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but you know,
Well,
you're
it's a
worth
nice,
it. You're
yeah,
supposed to say you're worth it, Les.
no, it's a nice city. We go on the ferry across the Mersey, can't we?
No.
No, I've done that once. I won't try doing it again.
No. Oh man, it's been really good to talk to you, Ross. What will we talk about next time? Because I'm sure, you know, we can get together and chat. Should we just have
Yeah,
a coffee and come online and blether?
yeah, we seem to do that quite well, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah, no, we've covered quite a lot today, I think.
I think we'll have. I think.
Yeah.
So it was great chatting to you, and hopefully next time we get together on the podcast, we'll be talking about going for a coffee and
I hope so.
lockdown.
Yeah, I really hope so. I mean, we did the last podcast we did, I think was in week 1, wasn't it, of
I think
lockdown?
so.
And that was pretty scary, pretty daunting. And now we're 6 weeks in, it seems a little bit more kind of hopeful, I guess. I know it's all really unknown, but it's at least we're partway through it now, not quite at the beginning.
I think we're about halfway through. I think by the time we get out of it, we're talking end of May, beginning of June, maybe.
We'll see, won't we? I have no idea how we're going to do this, but you know, like I said, we're 6 weeks in, not on the first week, so it's all a little bit slightly less daunting most of the time.
Yeah. Well, hopefully next time we'll be out of lockdown and we'll have a frothy coffee together.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's been great chatting to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You take it steady. Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye. Stay safe, Ross.
See ya.
Bye.